Hi guys. Welcome to my sick Elsword pet guide. Click the pets to jump sections, or just let the video play out. So what are pets used for? They give some stats. Some have plus 5% maximum MP. They can attack, usually doing 4000 to 5000% damage. They can also encourage you when your health is low. And they pick up stuff for you, so you can be lazy. They can also be inventory space. Well-trained pets will attack much more often and encourage you for longer, starting at a higher health threshold. The pet personality we want to go for is -100, -100, sensible and shy. Let's talk about pet mechanics. Pets have two status bars, hunger and affinity. As you PvE, the hunger bar will be consumed and affinity will change. At 40 to 60% hunger, affinity will neither increase nor decrease. Above 60% hunger, affinity will increase, and the increase is doubled above 80%. Below 40% hunger, affinity will decrease, and the decrease is doubled below 20%. Affinity gain is proportional to hunger, so a pet at 99% hunger will gain affinity faster than a pet at 80% hunger. A pet toy will double affinity gain and halve affinity lost if it's in your inventory. When hunger is over 80%, the pet is full and cannot be fed until the hunger drops below 80% by killing monsters. Miniboss and boss monsters will consume more hunger than normal mobs. The auto feed feature can be used to automatically give your pet food once it drops under 80% hunger. Under 40%, the pet is starving and will have many of its abilities disabled. When affinity goes over 70%, the pet becomes special and will only eat tree seeds and fruits. Pet attacks and encouragement effects become stronger. A pet at 100% affinity will have a 40% stronger attack and encouragement effect compared to a non-special pet. Disclaimer: everything past this point will assume you're working with an adult pet. Some of the values are different for crystal, infant, and teen forms. Sensibility is tied with a hunger bar. To gain sensible points, you have to feed your pet things that will increase your hunger at least 8.5%. Then resummon your pet. Most people use QPL jellies, tree seeds, or tree fruits. Normal equipments can also be fed, but are used less often. As long as it gives 8.5% hunger, you will gain a sensibility point. The amount of hunger QPLs and equipments give are dependent upon its equipment type, rarity, and the difference to your level. High level equipment will give more hunger. Rarer pets seem to get less hunger per equipment as well. Keep in mind, this means that as you level, lower level QPLs will no longer be able to give sensibility. tree seeds will give 9.5% hunger and tree fruits give 19.5% hunger. Strange QPL and seeds increase your hunger by a negligible amount. To be safe, just feed QPLs and tree stuff. Shyness is tied with the affinity bar. To gain shy points, you must gain 4% affinity, then resummon your pet. Resummoning with a low affinity change will cause your pet to become sociable. Resummoning with a higher affinity change will not have a higher change in shy points. Something to note, the first time you feed your pet every day, it will gain 2% affinity. Be careful not to let this mess up your 4% intervals. Feeding a fantastic jelly will give your pet 2% affinity. You can use a fantastic jelly as a first feed to gain 4% affinity, so you can immediately get a shy point. Feeding a strange jelly will decrease affinity by 5%, and a strange tree seed will decrease affinity by 10%. Now that all these mechanics are explained, we'll put it all together into the feed/starve cycle to train our pet to be -100, -100. Using the mechanics explained above, we have a way to turn our pet shy and sensible by feeding it for sensibility, bringing its affinity up, and acquiring shy points along the way, then starving it back to 0% affinity, so we can do it again. Let's start with a pet at 0 hunger 0 affinity. Be careful because the 2% affinity you gain from the first feed of the day may mess up things here. There are two options here. One is feeding it a fantastic UPL jelly, to immediately give it 4%, where you can unsummon and gain a shy point. The other is feeding it, then quickly resetting it back to 0 affinity. The 2% affinity from first feed applies after the affinity decrease from a strange QPL, so you can't use that to bypass it. I will use a fantastic jelly here. Great, we got a sensible and shy point. Once you've got the first feed thing out of the way, take your pet food, that will give sensibility points, and feed it to your pet one at a time. I forgot my Thanato won't gain sensibility from normal step 10 QPLs at this level. Oops. However, my pocket 4 can, which shows different pets get different amounts of hunger. Resummon your pet after each feed, so that it will get sensibility points for each item fed. Continue until your pet is full. At this point, throw a bunch of food into your pet's inventory, check the auto feed, and go do dungeons. Make sure you have a pet toy to make things faster. To train your pet, all you have to do is kill monsters. Be sure to monitor your pet's affinity bar closely, so you don't miss 4% intervals. I check the affinity after every room, and if it's one less than a multiple of 4, I keep my pet window open, so I can resummon immediately after getting 4%. I recommend running Trock's Lair, Heart of Behemoth, Rage of Behemoth, Farming Fields, or Title Grinding. Each has its own pros and cons. Trock's Lair has high mob density, meaning a great change in affinity. It also consumes a lot of hunger, which can be good for starving or training sensibility. As a low-level dungeon, it can be cleared quickly. The only con here is that you can't multitask. Running Trock's Lair is only for pet training. Heart of Behemoth is very similar to Trock's Lair, and has many of the same pros and cons. However, it has a higher affinity change to hunger ratio, as some of the spawned mobs do not count for hunger, but do for affinity. If you've discovered Behemoth Terminator, you can farm it here. Rest in Preparedness Reaper title. Otherwise, the con is the same as Trock's Lair. Rage of Behemoth has similar hunger, and affinity changes Trock's Lair. You can farm secret dungeon stuff here. The cons are that it takes longer to clear than Trock's Lair, and it is not available every day. Farming fields is another way to train your pet. You can farm field bosses as well. The con is that without a full party, it is pitifully slow. Title grinding, something like Passion Pay or Oath of Ruin, can be done while training your pet as well. The best part is that you're multitasking and doing 2 things at once. The only con is that it may not be very efficient. Dungeons like Adrian's Dwelling have abysmal affinity gain. You want to feed your pet just enough food so that it will hit 100% affinity and end up in the 60 to 70% hunger range, so you can begin starving it. If you are planning on running Heart of Behemoth a lot, feeding your pet an tree fruit when it becomes special should give you plenty of hunger to reach 100% affinity. Otherwise, if you're doing normal dungeons, use an tree fruit at around 80% affinity. These numbers only work with a pet toy. While your pet is at 100% affinity, its shyness won't change, so you can do whatever you want with it until it reaches 40% hunger, at which point it will begin starving. Make sure your pet toy is out of your inventory, because otherwise it will slow you down. Also, make sure to set aside at least 90 minutes to fully starve your pet. Spam the crap out of dungeons, and don't stop until your pet is 0% affinity. Try to do this in one resummon, because you will lose shy points when you lose affinity. Henny can be run in addition to the dungeons listed above to drain hunger. Henny will drain 7 to 9% hunger depending if you run elites. Trock's Lair drains 6%. Heart of Behemoth will only drain 6% hunger as well. I recommend running Henir and Trock's Lair until your pet drops to low hunger to get the double affinity loss, then do Heart of Behemoth to quickly drop affinity to 0. You can use strange QPL jellies and seeds to skip some of the affinity dropping. Once your pet is back at 0% hunger, 0% affinity, you can start the cycle over again. Once you have reached -100 shy, or just want to take a break from pet training, Leave your pet's affinity at 100% and feed it enough so that it never starves and loses affinity. Shyness will not change as long as the affinity stays constant at 100%. Thank you for watching my pet guide. I hope you learned something and start training your own super pet. Shout out to the guys at Pixel and Exausia. Thanks specifically to Chobits and Zovia for figuring out a lot of these pet mechanics and tricks. I'm just making the video. Also thanks to Sparta Mix on the forums for making the way of the pet guide. It was very helpful as a starting point. Thanks Curator for getting me a silly pet inventory screenshot because I was too lazy to log in and get my own. Shout out to the guild masters Dank Flames and Valencia. Thanks to Dank Flames for getting Pixel to rank 1 raid for a few weeks. And finally, thank you Valencia for getting my freaking potion passive.